Hello and welcome back. It is Jacob's Toys. Once again, we're going to do a top 10. This time we are going to do the top 10 Spider-Man figures. This is going to be a mixture of both MCU and comic book. If there's any that you think that I've missed out on, don't forget to drop a comment below. And if you enjoy the channel, as always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. It is very much appreciated. Okay, straight away I've told a bit of a fib. It is not comic book and MCU, it is solely comic book. I started looking through my collection and there was way more than 10 in my comic book alone, so I decided to stick with just that. So let's go straight in with an honorary mention. Spider-Man 2099 white suit. So this was the high-tech version of Miguel O'Hara's suit that was created by Peter Parker using Parker Industries technology and S.H.I.E.L.D. technology. It's a really cool suit. It really stands out, it really pops on the shelf, and it's a bit of a bulkier buck than some of the other Spider-Men. However, I was sport for choice, so yes, I wanted it in there, but it didn't quite make my top 10. It's quite limited to what it is. It doesn't have a huge amount of accessories or anything. There's good articulation on it, and it's a good figure. As I said, it stands out. It really pops. Didn't quite make the top 10, but it's definitely one that's worth having in your collection. Number 10, Spider-Punk. This is a really cool figure. Everything from the denim jacket to the guitar to the horns on the head to the sneakers. It's a really cool figure. So this is Hobart Brown from Earth 138, their version of Spider-Man. Ironically, he hates the name Spider-Punk, carries most of the same abilities as Peter Parker, but obviously plays an electric guitar. Is a fantastic character, definitely worth researching, but as a figure it is a really cool one. I put it in at 10 just because the body is very similar to the House of M Spider-Man. Not a huge amount of difference there, except for obviously the head and the shoes and the accessories, but it's definitely one worth having in your collection. Definitely a fun figure to have. Number 9. It is the infamous Pizza Spider-Man. So this one came out in about 2015, I believe, in the Hobgoblin wave, and very quickly became everybody's go-to Spider-Man. It was the classic design. It was on a standard body, looked the part, had a decent amount of articulation, and then was re-released recently in the retro wave as well. It's a really cool figure. However, there have been a better version released since, so therefore this one went straight down to number 9, whereas I think if I'd done this top 10 a little while back, it would have definitely been up there in the top 3 at least. It's still one of my favourites, so it made the top 10, but didn't quite hit the top spot. Definitely worth having. I would say pick up the retro card version. It's a much better paint app. Number 8. It is Ultimate Spider-Man's Peter Parker. This was from the Space Venom wave in about 2016. It is one of the only Spider-Man that I display with an unmasked head. And the unmasked head is fantastic. There have been 2 versions of this, one slightly lighter and one slightly darker. Obviously it stands a little bit shorter than the regular Spider-Man, but it's definitely one worth having in the collection. It's a teenage version of Peter Parker, but it's a cool little figure, and it definitely stands out amongst the others. Definitely worth picking up, although it can retail at quite a high price because it's quite sought after, especially that unmasked head. But it's definitely worth having a look for, and if you do see it at a decent price, make sure you grab it. You won't be disappointed. Number 7. Spider-Man Noir. So Peter Parker from Earth 90214. This is Spider-Man from the 1930s, New York. He's a really cool character, a really nice figure, really captures the character. I was first introduced to him in the Shattered Dimensions game on PlayStation, and obviously more recently in the Into the Spider-Verse film. I added the fedora and the guns just to finish him off, but he's a really cool addition to the shelf, and stands out against the other Spider-Men just because obviously his uniform is Kevlar and black, as opposed to like the normal Spider-Man with the emblems. Trench coat is cool, does limit his articulation, but it is definitely a cool addition to the Spider-Verse shelf. Number 6, Miles Morales. Miles is obviously a huge hit with the fans at the moment. First introduced to us in 2011, and then later in the 2018 Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie. It's him in his classic costume, very true to the comic books, looks the part, definitely a fan favourite. This particular one is getting harder to find, as it was part of the 2016 Space Venom wave, came with an unmasked head and a bunch of hands. It was later re-released as a 2-pack with Gwen, but with the Into the Spider-Verse emblem on the costume, and then most recently in the Stiltman wave we had the movie accurate version as well. But this one's still my favourite, and it's up there on my comic book display. Number 5. It's Miguel O'Hara with the 2099 Spider-Man suit, the classic version. This came as part of the Hobgoblin wave in 2015 and is a grail for a lot of collectors just because he's quite hard to come by. Character was first introduced to us in 1992 as part of Spider-Man 2099 and became an instant classic. I remember this one very vividly when I was reading comic books back in the 90s, and it really struck a chord with me as being something really cool and different, but yet still true to the Spider-Man origins. Figure also comes with the iconic cape, which is actually a piece of glider cloth that he attached to the costume in the comic books. A really, really cool figure. Number 4. Black Suit Spider-Man. First available in 2016 as part of the Sandman wave, and then later on in 2019 in a 2-pack with Craven. The black suit is iconically a classic suit from the early 80s. What's really interesting is it first came about as an idea that was submitted by somebody, a Marvel fan. Marvel purchased the rights to it and obviously created a story to go with it. Wasn't until 84 in the Secret Wars comic that we saw the black costume, which obviously turned out to be the symbiote costume, which obviously then led on to be Venom. It's definitely an iconic look. It's an absolute classic. It's quite easy a figure to pick up, but is a must for any collector's Spider-Man setup. Number 3. 2018 saw the Spider-Man game debut on the PS4. The standard costume in the game became an instant classic and very sought after. The same year, Marvel Legends released a exclusive Gamerverse video game version of the figure, and it became very sought after and quite difficult to pick up. Still a grail item in a lot of people's collection, it is a fantastic figure to own. It's much bulkier than the standard buck for a Spider-Man, it has quite a bit of articulation so you can get him into some really good poses, but matches the costume in the games pretty much to a T. He is definitely one of my favourites, as you can see, number 3, and a must for any collector. Number 2. The Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly himself. So from the 2015 Rhino Build-A-Figure wave, this is the Scarlet Spider. It's just so 90s, yeah, I absolutely love it. Reading the comic books in the 90s, the whole Clone Saga was an absolute favourite of mine. And when Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider was introduced in like the mid to late 90s, it became an instant favourite of mine. There was just something really cool about it at the time. This is a lovely figure. It was later released again in the Retro Wave. I think this is actually the Retro Wave one that I've got here, with slight detail changes. You can find this one still, obviously with a couple of versions out there. It's made it not as elusive. Definitely worth chasing down and paying for. Number 1. In 2020, Marvel Legends gave us the Spider-Man Retro Wave. Instead of just repackaging the pizza Spider-Man, they gave us a brand new figure, and it was fantastic. This has so much extra articulation, the paintwork is spot on, the costume matches exactly what Spider-Man's does in the comic books. He came with an alternative head with slightly squintier eyes, came with a set of fisted hands as well, but as I said, the paint job and the articulation alone secured the top spot for this figure. He is absolutely fantastic. If you don't have him, then do try to chase him down. He is becoming more and more rare as collectors are keeping him boxed and unboxed in some collections. But he's just an absolutely fantastic figure and exactly what you would hope from the guys at Marvel Legends. So do try to pick him up if you haven't got him. Thanks very much for watching. If obviously you've enjoyed this, please do like, share and subscribe. And don't forget, do look us up on other social media channels as well. Take care now, bye.